So hello and welcome. I'm Kendy Skidmore and I'm the Recruitment and Retention Specialist for the Department for Children and Families in Bennington. My job is to recruit foster parents and respite providers and to retain the ones that we have. I'll share some information with you about fostering and other ways you can support and help children who are in custody. And I'm going to introduce you to Gretchen, who is a foster adoptive mom, who will also speak, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. Or if you have a burning question while we're talking, you can ask it then too. We currently have about 135 kids in Bennington County that's an open case or in foster care. We have currently 70 licensed foster homes. Of those 70 homes, 20 of them are kinship placements, which means they're licensed because they're providing care for a relative or a really close friend, someone that they've had a connection with the child prior to them coming into custody. 14 of those homes are inactive. They're not providing care. They're not taking kids at this time. And 5 of them are on adoption holds. If you adopt a child that's been a foster child, your license goes on hold for 6 months to have time to, bond and adjust to that new relationship, because there are some changes when that happens. So 5 of those homes are on adoption holds and 25 more are full. They're at capacity. They have no room for any other kids. That leaves us with about 6 homes that are available to take children that might come into custody. Those 6 homes also have conditions or have identified specific ages or gender that they can, maybe they have children of their own, so they can only take girls of a certain age or boys of a certain age. So that limits us even more. Ideally, if we have 100 kids in custody, we should have 200 foster homes so that we can make the right match. We don't want to move kids from home to home and place them with you, and then it's not a good match, and so then we have to move them and place them with somebody else. So ideally, we should have more foster homes than we know that we're going to need, so that we can make that right match for the kiddo and for the foster parents. Kids come into custody because they've been neglected or abused, or they've entered the juvenile justice system. That means from the start that these kids have experienced significant trauma. Trauma prior to coming into custody. Coming into custody is traumatic. Being in a foster home and having to meet new people and live with new people and learn new routines is also traumatic. Excuse me. But it's also when the healing can begin. DCF works very closely with families. The goal is always reunification. When a kid comes into custody, we're hoping that they're going to be able to get back home to their families. So a lot of work has to happen with the families. And kids are in custody for, usually minimally it's about 6 months, unless, lots of great stuff happens right from the get-go. But it can be 6 months to 2 years that a kid is in custody. By the 15-month mark, the judge is going to want to see a permanent plan. What's the permanency plan for this kid? We're not going to, we don't want kids aging out of foster care or just staying in foster care forever. So where's this child going to be permanently? And hopefully by that time, the parents have done enough work that the plan can be for them to go home. If and when a child is reunified with their family, it's called a conditional custody order, and DCF stays involved for an additional 6 months, just to make sure that it's going to work and that they've been out of the home for a while, so now we're putting the children back home, and we want to stay involved and make sure that that's going to be successful. back to the trauma that kids have experienced. So that comes with a lot of stuff sometimes. Behaviors, attachment stuff. So we're expecting foster parents to be able to deal with these behaviors and learn about this child and educate themselves about how to deal with these behaviors and support this child. And that's a big ask, and it requires a lot of learning. DCF will provide training free of cost, and there is training required to become a licensed foster home, but always continuing the learning is very important. Kids are coming from all different backgrounds and have all different kinds of stuff that we need to learn about and learn how to deal with and be successful. We do pay foster parents a tax-free stipend for caring for the child. We realize that it's not enough. It's not what we would hope that we would be able to pay for the hard job that foster parents have, but it is what it is. In addition to the stipend, though, we can provide, excuse me, every child has health insurance coverage. If they're under school age, then daycare is paid for. We provide trainings and education support, respite for foster families if they need respite with their foster child. Mileage reimbursement if you're traveling and having to transport the child to visits and whatever, we will provide a mileage reimbursement. What am I forgetting? Anything there? We have a foster parent support group that meets every month, and they provide enrichment activities for foster families. We've helped with camp scholarships for kids. That group is pretty involved with helping to support the kids that are in custody and their foster families. So that we try to get all foster parents to participate in that monthly gathering of foster parents. So we have children of all ages that come into custody, right from newborn through teenage years. The teenagers often have come in because of juvenile justice involvement. They've gotten into trouble and or whatever, and so they're an open case with DCF, or they're a sibling of a whole family has come into custody. When that happens, we try to place the kids together, but with very few foster homes, it's unlikely at this time that a family of 3 children are going to be able to be placed together when our foster homes are full. Case workers are assigned to the families and develop goals for families to work on and set up visits for the children and work on that reunification plan. My job is pretty much to work with the foster parents and be that kind of in-between person, making sure that foster parents are having a good experience with caseworkers, that have the resources and the supports that they need, as well as trying to recruit additional foster parents. I, myself, have been a foster parent for 16 years. I've had over 75 children in my home. I've provided foster care, kinship care, guardianship, respite, and I've adopted 6 children. So this is my daughter Bella. Bella is adopted, and she came to me at 2 days old, right from the hospital. So I thought she was the last one I was going to adopt, but we did adopt one more. So I've also done all ages. Bella was really the only newborn that I did, because I would keep all of those probably. But I've done teenagers. I've done all ages. My favorite, I think, is the teenagers. They're self-sufficient. They're a lot less work. Comes with other challenges, but surprisingly, we don't have a lot of people that are interested in fostering teenagers. So if you know someone who loves teenagers, please send them my way, because we don't have anyone that will, at this time, that's interested in taking teenagers. And I have, I've always had teenagers in my house, and been pretty successful, I think, fostering teenagers. So it's not what everyone thinks it might be. It's not as bad as you might think. I think it's probably the hardest job I ever did, but it's also the most rewarding. I've appreciated every kid that's come into my home, and I'm amazed at the resilience that kids have. I've been able to maintain contact with many of them, and now they have children. Many of them have children of their own. So it's been quite a journey, and I feel very blessed to have been able to help all those kids and have all those kids in my home. So I would recommend everyone do it. At least try it. At this point, I want to introduce Gretchen, who is also a foster parent and adoptive mom, and I think she's got some stuff she can share about her experience. She came on board at a really tough time during COVID, things have changed a lot since that sort of shutdown of everything. But she managed to stick in there despite the not having a lot going on during COVID, and not a lot of support, because trainings weren't happening and visits weren't happening and those kind of things. But Gretchen, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can share your.
Well, I wanted to thank Kendy so much for inviting me, because Kendy is on the front lines every single day, and we could not do it without Kendy and all the people at DCF. Like, I am in awe of these people who are working in crisis, which, I don't know why I didn't realize it wasn't a crisis. It's a huge crisis for everybody, and are doing everything possible to make the best decisions for the entire family with no time, and it's really, really hard. So Kendy, I appreciate you so much, thank you. Why did my husband and I decide to be foster parents? Well, we had thought about it our whole lives. I'm one of 7, he's one of 7. We like kids, we're both former educators, and we thought, our kids are raised, we did a pretty good job with them, they're off and about. And during COVID, I call my adopted daughter now, she's our COVID kid, because my husband said, well, we've been talking about this for years. We're not going to get a placement if we don't go through the training and get licensed. So at that time, we started doing all the work and, the background checks and everything that you have to do to have a child in your home. And so then we were ready. But that's really what made us. We thought, we're older. Right now we have a 30-year-old, a 32-year-old, and a 37-year-old, and now we have an 11-year-old. But we, thought that we were prepared and had the time and energy to be able to put into it. So that's how we got it. And we have this space, and we both come from large families. We love kids. We had seen for years the advertisements everywhere. Foster kids need it, or foster parents need it. For years, all of these signs, and always thought, wow, that seems like a nice thing to do, but never took the next step. Both of us, too, have friends who have done foster care and are in awe of them and love them and thought, wow, we think we would want to do that. But it took a long time for us to come to the place where we put the pen to paper and did all the hard work. So I want to thank you guys for showing up, because it's a big step to walk through this door and say, I want to go forward, because it's a huge commitment. So thank you. I applaud you for that. What we discovered in foster care that we did not know. And I don't know why I didn't know this. Foster care is a crisis situation. Kendy said that a little bit. There is lots of moving parts all the time. Hi, come on in, Colorado. Good to see you. Oh, and you're here with your daughter and husband. Welcome, welcome. This is one of my angels right here.
Yeah.
Carmela is a post-adoption worker. So I meet with her and she loves me up and helps me and supports us along the way. I'll talk more about that. But, you know, DCF only has a certain amount of information. So they're working with the best information that they have at the moment. Because a kid comes into care, you know, they need this, they need that, you know, is there kinship available? Can they get that? And, you know, I thought, I guess I just didn't realize. I'm kind of a planner, like I like things out. Well, this is a crisis. It's hard for the biological family. It's horribly traumatic for the child. It's hard for the foster parents and the emotional stress. I don't work for GCS. I can't imagine that stress. So you're dealing with lots of, you know, moving parts. And, you know, like I said, I'm a planner. Like, I like things planned out, neat and tidy. Well, this is not neat and tidy. Everything is unexpected. And we learned pretty fast to stay in the day, just do what we could with the information we had at the moment. And we really got, especially me, we got online and started investigating other resources too, you know, but we had the time and energy. The next thing we learned, because once again, we thought we were so good at parenting. Parenting a child, we realized with trauma, is totally different than parenting our other children, which I didn't know. I said, oh, we raised our kids with the philosophy, raising kids with love and logic. Well, now we had to learn, or thank goodness we learned about being a trauma-informed home, because it's not the same. You're not giving kids timeouts, you're giving them time-ins. It was all about connecting with the child, which now when you go to school, you probably learn about that, but I didn't in college, and I'm an educator. So we had to learn about the trauma-informed home, the trauma-informed classroom, the trauma-informed church, the trauma-informed everything. And I now am addicted to learning about that, because it is a much gentler, kinder, effective way to treat anybody. And who doesn't come from trauma? I said, going through COVID for the whole world is enough for everybody in the world to be trauma informed. It just works. So that's what we learned. You know, it was a lot. And in the back, I hope you will look at, I brought some of my favorite resources that I read and that I held on to, because I needed to learn things differently. Because foster children and adoptive children have different needs than my other kids did. I already said everybody is doing the best they can with the information they have. So the other thing is, once we went through the training, and the training was unbelievable. Like what I learned and you can do it now online at your own pace. So my husband can do it on his time. I could do it on my time. You can take your time and go at the pace that you need, because it's emotional. And there's little things that you can try, but I really learned, like, oh my goodness, like I knew other people who had adopted children before or fostered, but I'm like, I just didn't think that, like I didn't know. So it's so much information to learn, but it is life-changing information, or for me, it's been life-changing. So the other thing I didn't know was all of the players in the system that have helped me or helped our family. There was the licensing person. So it started out with that. You fill out all the paperwork, and then you have a licensing person, and that person comes to your home and they go through your house and make sure you have running water and everything is safe. So you do that. And they were really nice. Like, I was afraid at first, but they were very kind and just wanting it. Then there's the training and resource person, which that's what Kendy and Wendy Nolan do, I think. Wendy does too. Like, they help you get trained and on board. Then when you get the call, which we had numerous calls beforehand, and this, the first two did not work for our family. That's the other thing, is you don't have to take every placement. You know, it's not, they're just trying to find a placement because it's an emergency. The first two did not work for us because we had full-time jobs. They didn't have childcare. The third one, we say, the third one was a charm, and it was just made for us. But then we got a social worker, and our social worker is an angel. We call her, can I say her name?
Yes.
Dee Dee the Great. We love Dee Dee the Great. She was there to answer all the questions, to be there, like, we're like, oh my goodness, like, I had never navigated at school in IEP, which is the individual education plan. Like, all that stuff was totally over my head. And I've been out of the school system for a long time, so I didn't know all that stuff. Like, I'm going back to PTA and, trying that. But Dee Dee would answer any question. She would get back to me fast. No question was a dumb question, and really helped. Then we also had what's called a guardian ad litem, which I did not know what that was. And that's a person who, and Kendy will probably talk more about that, and we had a beautiful guardian ad litem who had been with our child throughout her whole time in care, so the same person. So she also had a lot of information that we did not know. And she was able to just, regardless of how I felt and my husband and the birth parents, her job was to focus and advocate just for my child in court, which I didn't know anything about the court stuff. But this person really loved my child and did everything possible to do what was best for them in every area, but especially what I loved is the education part of it. That was very helpful. Then there was the birth family, and we are grateful that and it doesn't always happen like this, but we have a beautiful growing relationship with our child's parent. And that doesn't always happen. I would say, this seems unique to me, but I've only done it one time. But we're glad for that because it made it easier, because I think that can be tricky. And then we have the child who comes into our home, who, every child is different, but sometimes it happens fast. The child doesn't know it, and then they get dropped off on somebody's doorstep. They don't know them. It smells different. It looks different. We have pets. I have 2 big dogs, and, I was always worried my dog was going to scare the child. So that is really a, tricky thing, trying to always think about what it must feel like to be the child, to be dropped off somebody else who, is a vegan, who doesn't eat regular food, and my husband's out buying Oreos and macaroni and cheese, and, so that's it. Then there's other people, emergency placements or respite care, which we didn't do that, but we had an angel who did respite care, and we couldn't have made it without that person. This is somebody who had fostered before, who knew our child, who was able to take them and overnight and give us a break. So that's another way, like if you said, I don't feel like I could do foster parenting right now, but you could do respite care. That is huge, because we needed a break to just circle the wagons and really know that we could do this and just move ahead. So the respite people are very, very important, and Kendy will talk more about that. And then I wanted to talk for us, the other angels in the equation, which I did not know, were my church family. Ellen back here is a part of our support system, and she has loved my child, taken her for play dates, but our church family has really been a part of it. My neighbors, our former educators, they were a part of our support system. We really, the therapists, everybody really was helpful to what was going on, because my husband and I really were overwhelmed at times. The therapists, the doctors, and the other former foster parents were all really helpful for us. So, I didn't think of all the little pieces. I just thought, you go and be a foster parent. No, there's a lot of other things that you can do. And Kendy will talk about that, like emergency transportation. I think that's all I have to say, but one of the things my husband did, say, and I was really thinking about it when I came here today, and I applaud you for coming, is if we didn't go through the process, we wouldn't have had the placement. And I'll try not to cry right now, but I feel like in my family, we have trained our whole entire lives for this moment. It has been hard, it has been awesome, it has been fun, it's been heartbreaking. I would not change it for all the money in the world. So I thank you. I look forward to hearing how you want to get involved somehow. And as I'm navigating with my older kids, but with my child now, we are in a really tricky time in this world. It is a really tricky time to be a parent. It's a really tricky time to be a kid. And any support we can give anybody, I could have used these angels when I raised my other kids. But I thought when I was raising my other kids, I couldn't ask for help like this. I had to ask for help this time because we needed a break. We needed other people to help step in and stand in the gap. And what I've learned is people want to help. They might not be able to or be in the position to be a foster parent, but they will buy clothes. They'll take your kid for a play date. They'll take your kid, to do other things. So this time around, we really needed to be willing to ask for help and receive help, which I've always been the helper. I can do this myself. No, I couldn't. I needed all of these people in, our family, the village, to help us. And this library is a part of our family. Like our child, we come here, we do art upstairs, and we run around, and I read books and sit on the side. So there's things in our community that also are a part of our story, our adoption story. And I think if every person here, steps up, but as we continue to plant the seeds and ask other people, we will be a much kinder, gentler place if we can all come alongside each other and help families. So that's my love and passion. I've always worked with kids, and now is my time to do this portion. So thank you for coming and listening to my story. And we're on foster hold right now because of adoption, but we're coming up for air, and now we're thinking about doing respite and other things. We haven't signed on the dotted line yet because it's a process, but we're getting to the point where we're saying, okay, we're ready again. So thank you so much. I think that's all I have.
Thank you, Gretchen. So I'm sorry for the folks who came in a few minutes late. You might have missed my spiel, but we will have time for questions at the end if you want. I had, prior to Gretchen speaking, I had talked about the need for foster homes in Bennington County. Gave a few statistics. You did a great job filling in all the gaps, Gretchen, and I just wanted to say that when folks come on board to foster, those supports are available. We don't always know what we're getting into either. These kids come in like now, and we have to find a place tonight. So we don't know the whole history. Maybe there's been some involvement before. Maybe there's been an open case. They've been identified as, at risk, and someone's been working with them, and so we know a little bit more. Or maybe something just happened today, and these kids need to come in, and we don't know any more than you do. So we can't give you more information if we don't have it. But we know that we need to have a bed for that child to sleep in tonight. So we will work with you and work with their family to get as much information as we can to make it as easy as possible for everyone involved, and get the supports in place that foster parents need, that the kiddos need, that the families need, to make this a successful placement and then hopefully reunification. Not all kids get to go home. So if a child is placed with you and has been there for a lengthy amount of time and things are not working in the favor of reunification, then you might be asked if you're interested in adoption. At which point more people get involved. The Lund gets involved, and there's a whole other process for doing that. But and maybe you don't want to be a permanent option. Then at that point, we would start looking for a placement that would be interested in adopting this child and make that transition. Maybe you already know that fostering is not for you, but you're looking for other ways that you could help kids in custody, and there's a lot. Respite was mentioned. Respite providers they're not licensed individuals. They don't have to go through the licensing process. There is an application and a background check. But respite providers are folks that provide childcare when a foster parent needs to go out of town or just needs a break, or we have a kiddo that's come into custody and we don't have a place yet, so we need a respite provider might take the kiddo for a little bit until we can find a foster placement. Maybe they're doing after school care, or maybe they're doing care while the foster parents work. There's a whole varied amount of needs for respite providers. We also look for folks who can provide transportation. So let me just say, respite providers are also paid. That is, unlike the foster care stipend, which is tax-free, the respite payment is taxable, and it's not a huge amount of money, but they're paid, and they can also be paid for mileage. We look for folks who are able to provide transportation. We have kids that need to go to Burlington for a medical appointment, or they need to go to, North Adams for a therapy appointment, or whatever. They need transportation to daycare after school, or maybe they only go to school part of the day, and so they need transportation back home or to daycare, or need respite for the rest of the afternoon that they're not in school. So some folks might just provide transportation for our foster kids, and I think we have one person that we rely on very heavily, and she's been great. She did a respite application, but that's all she's interested in doing is transportation, but she's done all kinds of transportation for us, to Rutland, to Burlington, she's even done transportation for other districts. So that's very, very helpful. Maybe you have a talent or a skill that you'd like to share with kids or families. Maybe you're a photographer and you'd like to do family photos, or you have a craft that you'd like to introduce to kids. We do enrichment activities and foster gatherings all the time, and welcome those kind of things. We have a foster care closet, which a church in Bennington is housing for us, and we have a room full of clothes available to kids in custody. So foster parents or the caseworkers can go to the closet and get what they need for the child throughout their stay in foster care, but it's especially important when a kid first comes in, because usually they're coming in without any belongings. So having the closet, stocked with underwear and socks and pajamas and clothes for all sizes has been huge for us. And diapers for the littles that come in. We do have folks that give us free diapers, and so we're able to share that with the foster families. Baby equipment, we're often looking for those kind of things. The Foster Parent Association does have a Facebook page, and it's Bennington County Foster Care, and we post just about daily on there. And that's where we might put things that we need, or we'll reach out to through email, particular items that we're needing, or the transportation, or those kind of things. So Gretchen mentioned the guardian ad litem as well. Those are volunteer positions, and that's through the court. And that's a person assigned to each child who is there to represent the best interests of the child, and to be able to speak on behalf of the child. So, parents have an attorney, the child has an attorney, the DCF has an attorney, and the child also has this guardian ad litem. who does home visits, will get to know the child, and be able to represent in court what is in the best interest of the child. That you could, if you're interested in that, that's on the Vermont Judiciary site, an application for that. We also need guardian ad litems. They always need a guardian ad litems. I think I've covered everything. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm sure there must be questions. Let me just say, everybody gets one of the green bags, and there's more information in those. I also need everyone to sign in, please. And on this table are some books that Gretchen brought in that were very helpful for her. I have a couple posters over there if anyone knows of a place that they could hang a poster saying that we need foster parents. I'd love it if you could take those. And I do have applications with me today because I'm sure you're all going to want to fill out an application before you leave. So I do have those. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah. Because I know you have specific ones. You came with a list, right?
Can you talk a little bit more about the kiddos who come because of juvenile justice and
Yeah, so those are typically older kids, teenagers, preteens. They've maybe picked up charges. Maybe they've stolen or they've been in a fight or, and so it might start out as an open case, but they are assigned a worker at DCF. And usually that's Dee Dee, that Gretchen mentioned earlier. She does a lot of the juvenile cases. They don't always end up in a foster home, but sometimes they do. If parents aren't able to help support them, or so. I'll give you an example. I have had a teenager who came into custody, was placed with me, but was also involved in the juvenile justice system. The family was not able to make sure he got to court, make sure that he got to see his probation officer. So things just started piling up for him, and so he came into custody, was placed in a foster home, was able to get off probation during that time in a foster home. And some work was able to be done with parents at the same time. So that's what that's what I mean when I say they're involved in the juvenile justice system. And it could be, that's the only thing, and the parents aren't involved at all, and they're not placed in a foster home. They're just like juvenile probation, or it could be that they are actually in a foster home and involved in that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Well, I have 3 adopted children. They're not kids. Like 30 to 40.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them. I've had them since practically birth.
Wow.
Adopted from other countries. And I'm also I haven't done it in a long time because I'm into a new business now, but I'm Montessori certified and my child care degree and things like that from way, way long ago. I love babies. I'm good with babies. My husband loves babies. I would be interested. In fact, one of my good friends in New Jersey before we moved here, she would foster babies. That's what she did. And I remember going over there because she was fostering puppies for me because I had a puppy business here, rescue. And I would go over and she said, oh, we just picked him up, at 2 o'clock in the morning, but he was drug addicted. It's a lot of drug addicted mothers, and then they have to go and try to get clean. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But I remember her going over there, and she'd been up all night because he was addicted to drugs. It was awful. And I remember saying, just go grocery shopping, do something, give him to me, I will rock him. And I just remember and she did that, and then as soon as that baby went, back, and sometimes it's a year, oh God, I said, how do you do it? I mean, because he only knows you as his mom, right? And she had a lot of sex. But I was really so impressed, and they would go back. It was interesting because the one thing that bothered me a little bit is they'd have to take the baby, maybe if she's had him a year, and go to the place where the birth mother comes, and leave the baby in a room with somebody, and then the mother would come and take the baby, and you never see the baby again. And I thought to myself, you know, is there some kind of an abandonment? Like, you know, children feel like all of a sudden they're ripped away from the only mother they ever knew at a year and a half. And then you're not allowed to see the child again. That's how it is in New Jersey.
That's not how it is here.
Yeah, yeah, because so that always bothered me, and I said, you know.
So, and for kids who are reunified
Yeah.
with their families, we are, you know, that is really up to the family.
Right.
DCF is not involved anymore, so we can't dictate or order that they maintain contact with a foster parent who has fostered this child
Right.
for a year or 2 years. That's why it's so important for foster parents to establish good relationships with the families that are coming in.
Yeah.
If you have a good relationship with your foster child's biological family, then the chances are if and when that child goes home, you're still going to maintain contact. You're still going to see that kid. That child's still going to want to see you. And like I said, I've had many foster kids and have been able to maintain contact with all of them. I would say all of them except the ones that moved away. But it really depends on the relationship that you have with the biological family.
Yeah, yeah.
So
that's
it's important to work closely.
How often do you get, like, see, I would be interested in the newborn, the babies. So how often does that come up where there's a need for that? You know, get right to the hospital and bring the baby home?
Well, that's hard to say, but it happens, and it seems to happen in numbers, like all at once, like we get 3 or 4.
Right.
So, but it happens because usually it's drugs.
Yeah.
Usually it's drugs. That's why kids are being removed at birth.
Yeah.
But not all the time.
Not all the time.
There's other
and that
circumstances.
That's right, and that wasn't Bella's case. She, you know, came right from the hospital to me, and it wasn't because of drugs. So there's lots of different reasons kids come in, but and the hospital does a really good job of, you know, they keep the babies while if they're born addicted, they keep them for like 5 or 7 days, 5 days, I think, and then they do some education with the foster parent or wherever the placement is going to be, and when babies come in, they get a lot of visits they get daily visits with their mom.
Yeah.
You know, they want to make sure that bonding does happen, but we don't take a baby and put it in a room and make the foster parent go away and then you never see him again.
Yeah, there's no
we don't do that.
interaction. I just thought that
no.
was just not good for the child. You know?
Yeah, no.
But this is also 2025. I bet if that was
Right.
years ago, things have changed.
Right.
And now
About
we
10
know
years ago.
more about trauma.
Yeah.
Right, right.
What I didn't know, I just wanted to add, is that foster care is always about reunification. And it's not about adoption. And the other piece of the puzzle that I didn't talk about is that how DCF, or I don't even know who it is, the Easter Seals are working really hard with the parents to do classes behind the scenes to make it possible for a child to go home. And that's always the goal, is for the child to go home. And then on the occasion, when it doesn't happen, adoption is a possibility. And then if you do adopt, I said hi to Carmela, when you come in, you get a post-adoption worker, which is was crucial to us, because it doesn't just end like, oh, you got this kid and everybody goes away. We really had the support that was so helpful, and continues to be helpful to us. So thank you, Carmela.
Me too, thank you. Yeah.
Given the challenge it is to find medical care, just like for adults and for like normal people here in the county, in terms of a GP or a psychiatrist, is there any kind of like expedited shortlist, or like if the child that you're paired with needs psychiatric or a GP or something like that, is there like an expedited way to connect them with that?
I'm not sure about all that, but we haven't really had any problem with getting kids, hooked up with physicians, dentists. We've had a little bit more trouble with that, but we do have a dentist who prioritizes younger kids and kids in custody. So, and we work very closely with the mental health agency. So we have, and the FEST program and the children's services at UCS and PUC and all of the various programs that they have there at UCS. We have been pretty successful getting kids involved in programs that they've needed and participating in those. I think one of the biggest challenges is the schools right now, putting kids on reduced days. Because of their behaviors or whatever, they then put them on a 2-hour day, school day. That really wreaks havoc with schedules and services for kids. And they seem to be doing a lot of that lately.
I think what I'm speaking about more specifically is that, like, for example, a colleague of mine has someone she adopted who has like extreme bipolar.
Uh-huh.
And so talking about just like ways to detect as early as possible, like manic depression, bipolar, any of the things that like may or may not be trauma induced, but may or may not be part of the causes for why they were separated from their parents to begin with.
Right.
As a way to like best support the child so that they're not going through those extremities before you figure out necessarily that like they need that additional care.
Right. So caseworkers do try to get a health history on all parents, and so we have some of that information for kiddos, like what any diagnoses that parents had and all that, and get them in services. I don't know that bipolar and those kind of things can be diagnosed at a young age. It usually has, I believe it usually doesn't get diagnosed until they're
18.
Yeah. So, you've got these things that you're dealing with that don't really get diagnosed because it's too early. But there is testing. The schools help support that, for autism spectrum and all of those kind of things. Once they're adopted, if they're involved in post-permanency supports, that support worker will help get connected to services. But we do try to get all of those things in place for kids while they're in custody. If they're adopted, like you're speaking of, I'm not sure what's available aside from the Easter Seals, if they're not involved with Easter Seals post-permanency services. It's like anybody who has a kid who needs to see someone. There's waiting lists or there's whatever.
So I would say that our social worker was very, very helpful getting into, doctors, that kind of stuff. In the state of Vermont, we all know we're in a mental health crisis, so getting access to care in that way is very tricky. The other thing I realized for me is I had to be my child's advocate from every area. At the school, I was learning things that I didn't know I needed to learn really fast, to do everything possible to get in there with the school, with the therapists, to help get care. Because it's that's a learning curve. But there's help out there. The Vermont Family Network was also really helpful to us. There's a place I don't know where it is, but you can call them up and they can help you with services of, navigating IEPs and mental health. Like it was, to just have somebody on the phone to answer questions was very helpful.
Right.
That was another resource that I was given.
I have a question for families that have children. Is there a age recommendation? For example, I know Launch for Adoption recommends like younger children when you already have a child. How about fostering? Is there like a guideline there?
No, there isn't. We're really going to rely on you to determine what's best for your family. You might think that your child would do fine with a teenager in the house, or a little tiny baby or a toddler. Maybe you want someone who's the same age. We have no way of knowing what's gonna work best for your child. You're gonna be the expert on that. But there isn't anything in writing that says, oh, if you have a 9-year-old, you can only take under 7. Nope, there's no guidelines for that. We're gonna rely on you for that. Other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Last one.
It's okay. Ask as many as you want.
Not knowing the specific age that you're getting in foster care. I know that you mentioned the closet that has like the clothing and stuff, but like if it's a baby and you need a stroller and a crib, or if it's a 3-year-old and you need sheets for a bed, or like how does your agency support those like overnight changes to like beyond clothing structurally support the placement?
Right. So we do also keep some of those items in a storage. We don't have a lot, but we have some folks out there that we know have cribs or have this, or so they're holding on to them for us. We have the people that we can call to get those things right away. We are also able to go purchase some things. We can go to Walmart and pick up the bottles and the whatever is needed for the child. When a child comes into custody and we're placing them with you, the other thing that happens is you only get paid once a month for a placement, and it's on the 15th of the month. So if we're placing a child with you today, you're not going to get paid, excuse me, until April 15th, and only for the days in March. And then on May 15th, you're going to get paid for the month of April. So we'll provide food vouchers and those kind of things for the family when they have extra kids moving in. Yeah. So we'll help get any of that stuff that kids need. And then, we've had placements. So say we place a baby with you and we've gotten a crib and whatever, and then baby goes home. And now you have this stuff, you might send it back, and we'll put it back in storage for the next baby that we need to place in a home that doesn't have a crib or whatever. So yeah, we'll make sure that kiddos have what they need. So I know that a couple of you here have either applications in or inquiries in, or I've talked with you on the phone before. Like I said at the beginning, I do have applications and packets here for you to fill out, to take with you, and please make sure that you've signed in. I want to make sure that you don't leave with any questions, any burning questions that you've had regarding, excuse me, how you might get involved or be.
Well, I have one question. How long does it, once you fill out the paperwork, how long does the process take until you maybe pick a job?
Oh, it happens much faster than you could imagine.
Yeah, right.
So once the paperwork is filled out, we will send it to the licensing unit. We may have, so you may complete your application and send it, and I'm sending it up to the licensing unit, but we have a kid that comes in that I know is going to be perfect placed with you. Excuse me. We can do a records check in our office. We don't do them unless we have to do them on, emergency basis like this. Excuse me. So we can clear you, and we can also conditionally license your home. We can do a district approval, it's called. So any staff person at the local office can come and, excuse me, do the licensing. And then, so that a child can be placed with you. And then licensing kind of speeds up their process, because now you already have a kid placed with you. So, yeah, it can happen really fast.
Yeah.
I remember when I filled out my application to become a foster parent, 2 days later I had a kid.
Yeah.
So,
And if you go, like, if you have a child, and you have a vacation plan, that's where the respite person would come in, or?
the respite can come in. You know, we love it when foster parents can figure out how to incorporate these kids into your family.
Oh.
And make them feel like part of your family. So if you can take them on vacation,
Mhm.
that's great. That's great for
So
the
you
kid.
can leave
and
the
it-
state with them?
Yes.
Okay, see, yeah,
Yes.
that's interesting, yeah.
Yes, you can.
Another
Good.
question here. As post-permanency, I know I help families get funds for extra classes, for, summer camp, music classes, gymnastics. Is there that kind of support for fostering? Like if I have a child that wants to go to karate classes, is there like funds to support that kind of extra activities?
There is supports available in a limited capacity. So the Foster Parent Association will contribute like $100 towards the Vermont Foster and Adoptive VFAFA will also contribute, if you're a member, can contribute $100 toward that. We could ask for sponsorship for those bigger things. We do have a couple of sources that we can ask for sponsorship for things. But so it's minimal in that amount, it's $100 here, because part of your stipend is also considered for enrichment or allowance or whatever to be used for that. So no, we can't fund, an ongoing probably gymnastics class that might cost, $200 a quarter or whatever. I'm just using that as an example. That's not going to be something we're going to be able to do, but
Yeah.
those one-time camp funds in the summer, we'll assist with those and try to help find sponsorship as well.
Yeah, the classes are not so bad, but when you go to summer camps, the
Right,
price can
right.
really be.
Right. Also, we look for, we'll ask the camps if they can provide some scholarships as
Yeah.
well.
That's
Yeah.
a good-
Because they're usually pretty good at providing scholarships for kids, foster kids or, kids with special circumstances. So we'll look for scholarships and we'll look for funding support. Yeah.
I don't know if you've already covered this at the beginning, but what's involved in signing up
Okay.
to be a foster?
Yes. I think that I covered that at the beginning, maybe before you came in, but I'm happy to go over it again. There's an application, and I have some of those. So you fill out an application, and what they'll do is a background check. They're going to check to make sure that there's nothing on your criminal history that would be a red flag for placing children with you. A licensor will come to your home and check to make sure you have smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors and that you have running water and it's a safe environment for a child. And then there's trainings. All of them are online now, so you can go at your own pace. There's 3 required trainings. There's a kind of an introduction, and then there's what's called foundations training. That takes a little bit longer. But you can go at your own pace. And then there's the last training you have up to a year to complete. So you don't have to do them back to back to back, but we really need the foundations training done right away. And fingerprints, you have to go get your fingerprints. Even if the job you're in required you have fingerprints done, or you just had your fingerprints done last week for this person, we still need you to do them for us. And they pay for that. The state will pay for you don't have to pay for anything to become a licensed foster parent.
The courses, does that cover like how to respond to possible trauma?
Yes.
It will cover a lot of that stuff, yes. And like I said earlier on, it covers a lot, but you're also getting a lot of information all at once. So it's good to just keep getting trainings, keep getting all of the information you can. Read some of the books. Gretchen has brought books that she's found very helpful. The more information you can get, and it makes more sense when you get that child in your home, you know, and then you're looking for that kind of information, because every kid is different. But there's also trainings to help you become trauma informed. There's trauma trainings in addition to the foundations trainings and the other trainings that DCF offers. There's training specific to trauma. And all of those are at no cost. It doesn't cost, you know, we provide trainings, and we provide online trainings at no cost to foster parents.
And there's always continual trainings, like my husband and I took, it's called RPC Plus.
That's the one I was
Resource
talking about.
Parenting Curriculum, and that too was life-changing. You know, it was a parenting class, you're on Zoom with other parents and sharing back and forth what people are going through. And the internet is kind of a pain in the neck, but you can find, there are so many fantastic people out there doing fostering and adoption type stuff. You can find anything within moments. Like I found I was always like, I'm having this. And you know, things will come up. So
We even have a foster parent college. Did you know that, Gretchen?
no, but
Online.
I
There's a
would be
foster
interested in
parent
that, because
It's
I am
a-
addicted to learning this stuff now. There's
It's on the
the
state website.
resources are great. And continuously, you can go in and say, I have this going on, how would I handle it? And then I also did foster parent coaching, which I met online, and you could get a foster parent coach, and there's 10 people on there, and people share what's happening in their home, and these people listen. They don't give you advice, but they say these are some tools that would work in this situation. Because as I said in the beginning, it was totally different than parenting my other children. It was not the same at all. There is what's called reactive attachment disorder. Like some children have that, which is attachment if they're not, and really about connecting with children. You don't give, which I didn't know, you don't give kids in foster care time out. You give them time in. It's all about connection and rebuilding neural pathways in the brain of new ways of doing things. Because they say, now I know, a lot of kids, I'm sure they are in foster care, have behavior problems. Well, now I know behind every behavior is an unmet need. That's how we communicate. When we act ornery, it's because a lot of times something else is going on, but we don't know it. But when kids act ornery, we don't allow them. We think they're brats, you know, or jumping all over the place. We don't look at them the same way. Adults are allowed to have a bad day, but we want kids to be joyful and happy and well-behaved. How do you be well-behaved when life is tricky? You know, I don't want to be well-behaved all the time. So it's really the resources available. There's John DeGarmo out there. You can just Google him. He's written books on it. But the podcasts that are coming up, there's another woman, Laura, who does podcasts about foster, you know, parenting things every single day. Covers everything that you can imagine.
And in addition to the trainings that are offered and or required to become a foster parent, there is regulations. There's foster parent regulations, and you would be given a book of those regulations. You can also find them online. Just things like, you know, regulations around swimming pools or around firearms, you know, around the space that the child is sleeping in. There's regulations about all of that, and you're provided with those too.
There's also something which I didn't know called prudent parenting, which maybe you can talk more about that. But I thought I couldn't have my foster child go and be with somebody else unless they were licensed. But there's, you know, some things that you can do. It's called prudent parenting. Like if you have a good feeling about that and you feel like this person is okay, they could go on a play date. So that's
Yeah.
something I hadn't thought of.
When kids are in custody and placed in a foster home, we want to normalize that as much as
Yeah.
possible for them. And the guidelines and the regs have changed over the years to help accommodate that. I mean, it used to be that kids couldn't go anywhere else except, they couldn't go to an overnight at their friends if they were in foster care. They couldn't, go anywhere except to another licensed foster home. That has changed now. We want kids to be normal kids, so they can go stay overnight at their friend's house as long as you think that that's okay. And the caseworker doesn't have any reason to think that that's not okay. You might have older children that you would like to leave in charge. You're going out to dinner and so your older child is going to stay with your foster child. That's fine. We want you to use your natural resources. Unless, one of those people are not
Safe.
Not safe. Then we're going to say, no, you can't. But we want you to use your natural resources that you would for the other children in your home. Yeah, go ahead.
Another question.
Yeah, that's good.
Contact with birth parents while in foster care, how that works?
It's different for every kid. It depends on, like I said earlier, newborns get daily visits, sometimes all day long. They get 8-hour day visits. Those usually happen at the office. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Alan.
Nice to see you, Kendy.
Nice to see you. They could have 8-hour visits. Other kids might get 1 visit or 2 visits a week. Sometimes they're supervised, sometimes they're unsupervised. They can have contact with their parents without supervision. It's different for every kid, and it depends on what the reasons are that the child has come into custody, and it depends on what's happening with parents right now.
My question is kind of similar to that. So given how small Bennington County is in terms of like just population, if the separation is traumatizing for the parent or the child and then you run into them in Walmart, can you just talk about that a little bit? Like what?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and it does happen. I haven't heard of any bad experiences with that. As a foster parent, what I would say is, if you're with a child and they see their mom or their dad or their, aunt in the Walmart, they're going to want to say hi to them. They're going to want to give them a hug. And I think not freaking out because they can do that. You're there with them. You're supervising them. It's probably just going to be a quick hug. It's not to say that there haven't been those families that have been, a little louder about things. Would expect you to respond the way you would with any child. If you need to call for security or whatever. I don't hear about those things happening though. And I do hear more about foster parents. I just talked with one yesterday. She has a preteen who was having a really hard time. And it's been a tough family. I mean, they're quite vocal and loud and can be kind of rough around the edges. But that foster mom was able to call mom and say, can you just talk to her for a minute? She's having a rough time. I don't want you to, keep her on the phone for an hour and, I just need you to let her hear your voice and calm her down. She respected that. She kept it short and sweet and really was able to calm that child down. So there are usually opportunities for foster parents to build relationships with the bio families, and I think that always works better. Because think about it, if someone comes in and takes your kids away, you're going to be angry, you're going to be scared, you're going to be all of those things, and then you see your kid with a stranger. You still have all of those feelings. Isn't it so much better to know to be able to get to know the person that your child is with and know that you can trust them and that they're doing what's best for your child and that your child is safe and happy and all of those things. It's not to say that there's not situations where we don't tell biological parents who the foster parents are, or we don't give out addresses. We don't. Of course, you can probably find everything on the internet. So,
Yeah.
But until we're a little further into the case and know that everything's going to be safe and okay.
I wanted to just comment on that. One of the things that I was trained through my worker was to follow my child's lead. Like me as the protector, I felt like I wanted to jump in and fix a situation and make it happen. But I could trust my child and then come alongside them and see how they felt when they bumped into an old neighbor or that kind of stuff. I'd be like, ah! And they were like, if my child is okay with it, I can be okay with it, just as long as it's safe. And not make a big deal over things, because this is a very small area. You are going to bump into former foster parents, family members, so I always remember that. Follow my child's lead. And it really, really helped. And that's what I do. I have to stop getting upset myself because I'm upset and brokenhearted, but my child is fine.
Right.
So step back, breathe. I hope that helps because it really helps me. My person said, follow the child's lead. It's okay. If they want to hug the person, it's okay. As long as everybody's safe.
Right.
I have a question.
Yep.
I know if a child is going to a school that you don't want to change, you wouldn't want to take them out of the school. We're in Bennington County, but we're not in the SVSU district. The school in town isn't. Would there ever be a case where, supposing you get a child in the summertime, would we be able to enroll that child in a school in another district? Or is it not something?
Well, anything's possible. It's always a possibility. But I think the reasoning for keeping kids in the school that they're in is that the less change that we have for kids, the better. That's where the family's been connected. That's where the services are probably happening. If there are services in place. Also, it makes it more challenging if you're considering, that reunification is the goal, for parents to be involved in the academics and the school life of their child if their child is, out of district, out of the supervisory union, out of their school of origin. How can they be involved in that? And the reunification is always the goal. That's not to say that a little ways down the road, after the child's been with you for a while, depending on where the case is going and what's happening, that we might decide it makes more sense for the child to switch schools.
There's something like, he said summer, right? So let's say we get a kid for summer and there's no school, but our district offers free summer camp. So it's not school, but it's like,
Right.
Would this kid qualify for our district that is different going to that summer camp, even though they're not?
If they're living with you, yes, I believe they would.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so.
Not everywhere we get free summer camp.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'll move there for the summer.
Right?
We got room?
But it's not an issue not living in the city, like supposing that you're not in Bennington. We're
No.
far from Bennington, but we're in Bennington County.
Right. No, it makes some things more challenging, like transportation. We have foster families that live in, say, like Reedsboro, and we so they have to get to Bennington for visits because there's supervised visits at this point. So we've put the transportation in place. We have someone who goes and picks the kiddo up at daycare in Reedsboro and brings them to Bennington and then brings them back home. So that's when all of these other things that I talked about earlier, all the other supports that we look for and we need, it's to help supplement those kind of things or put those things in place for kiddos that are placed further away from the town. And our kids come from everywhere, so, but, you know, we have several, it's funny, we have several families, foster families in Reedsboro. Not a lot of kids come into custody from Reedsboro, but so we're transporting, and sometimes the foster families can do the transportation, and that's great. But yeah, we'll help figure that out. Other times we might, decide that it doesn't make sense because it's too much. Too much time in a car, too much traveling. We had, for instance, we had kiddos placed in Manchester whose school, daycare visits were in Bennington, and there were these times in between, so it was like 2 trips a day or so. That doesn't work well. Then we really need to figure out a placement in Bennington rather than, excuse me, so far away. Any other questions? I'm going to remind you to make sure you get the bag. If you want an application, I have applications. If you are only interested in respite, there's only 2 sections of this you need to fill out. If you're interested in fostering, there's a whole folder for you. So respite providers fill out sections 1 and 3. You might want to decide to start out as respite and then move into fostering. Maybe that makes more sense for you. Whatever works for you, and I'm here to answer any of your, if you think of any questions before I leave, but if you'd like applications, I have those. And I want to thank you all for coming. Gretchen,
Yes.
Thank you for being here and speaking. Bella, thanks for tagging along.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I hope
Jeanette.
that you'll all consider and tell your friends, neighbors, relatives, and if you have a place you can stick a poster up, please take one. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kendy.